I never thought my own sister would steal my inheritance. But looking back, I should have seen it coming. No, my name is Olivia. And until 6 months ago, I thought I understood what family meant. My parents raised us to believe that blood was thicker than water, that family always came first. My sister Megan and I grew up close, despite our differences. Me, the practical one who stayed in our hometown working as a nurse, and her, the ambitious one who moved to the city to pursue a career in finance. When our grandmother passed away last year at 92, we were devastated. She had practically raised us after our mother's long illness when we were teenagers. Grandma Ruth was our rock, our confidant, the woman who taught us both to be strong. At the funeral, Megan and I stood side by side, holding hands as we had when we were little girls. 2 weeks later, we met with Grandma's lawyer for the reading of the will. I wasn't expecting much. Maybe some sentimental items. Her collection of vintage brooches I'd always admired. Grandma had lived modestly in the same small house for 50 years. What I didn't know was that my shrewd grandmother had been quietly investing since the 1970s. Ruth's estate is valued at approximately $1.2 million, the lawyer announced. Megan and I exchanged shocked glances. The lawyer continued, explaining that Grandma had left specific instructions. The money was to be divided equally between Megan and me, with one condition. We were to use part of it to establish a scholarship fund at the local community college, where Grandma had taught English for 30 years. She wanted to help students who couldn't afford education, just as she helped you both with college, the lawyer explained. I felt a wave of emotion. It was so like Grandma to think of others, even after she was gone. There's a 6-month waiting period for probate, the lawyer continued. Megan, as the executor, you'll handle the paperwork. Everything should be settled by spring. I trusted her completely. Why wouldn't I? She was my sister, my only sibling, my best friend. The first sign that something was wrong came 3 months later. I called Megan to ask about some paperwork the lawyer needed me to sign, but she was evasive. I said I'm handling it, she snapped, then immediately softened her tone. Sorry, work is stressful right now. Trust me, okay? I'll let you know when there's something you need to do. I brushed it off. Megan had always been the one to take charge, and her job in investment banking was demanding. Still, something felt off. A month later, I tried again. Hey, shouldn't we be discussing the scholarship fund? Grandma wanted us to set it up. I've been researching options, Megan said vaguely. These things take time to do properly. When I suggested meeting to talk about it in person, she always had an excuse. Too busy with work. Planning a weekend away with her boyfriend. Coming down with a cold. 5 months after the funeral, I received a call from Mrs. Abernathy, Grandma's neighbor and closest friend. Olivia, dear, I wanted to ask about Ruth's house. The new owners are tearing out her garden, and I wondered if you saved any of her rose bushes. She was so proud of them. I felt like I'd been doused with ice water. New owners? The house hasn't been sold. There was a long pause. Oh, well, there's a young couple moving in. They started renovations last week. I assumed. My hands shook as I ended the call. I immediately tried Megan's number, straight to voicemail. I sent a text. We need to talk about Grandma's house. Call me ASAP. The next morning I drove to Grandma's house, or what used to be her house. Mrs. Abernathy was right. A dumpster sat in the driveway, filled with debris. The beloved garden was gone. Nothing but churned earth where Grandma's prized roses had bloomed for decades. I'm sorry, but this was my grandmother's house. I didn't know it had been sold. She looked confused. We bought it 2 weeks ago from a woman named Megan Reynolds. Is there a problem? My sister had sold our grandmother's house without telling me. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I sat in my car, trying to make sense of what was happening. With shaking hands, I called the lawyer who had read Grandma's will. Mr. Harrington, this is Olivia Reynolds. I need to know what's happening with my grandmother's estate. Her house has been sold, and I wasn't informed. Ms. Reynolds, I've been trying to reach you. Your sister presented documents showing you had relinquished your claim to the estate. She said you'd agreed to let her handle everything since you were busy with your nursing career. My signature. But I hadn't signed anything. Which could only mean one thing. Megan had forged my signature. I need copies of everything, I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the storm raging inside me. And I need them today. By evening, I had the evidence in my hands. Not only had Megan sold Grandma's house, but she had also liquidated most of the investments and transferred the money to accounts in her name only. The scholarship fund was never established. My sister had stolen everything. Not just my inheritance, but Grandma's legacy. I confronted her that night, showing up at her luxury apartment unannounced. "How could you?" I asked when she opened the door, her expression shifting from surprise to wariness. I pushed past her into the apartment. "I know what you did. You sold Grandma's house. You forged my signature. You stole my inheritance. You wouldn't have done anything worthwhile with it anyway," she said coldly. "You've never had ambition. You're content to stay in that dead-end town, working your little nursing job. I have plans, Liv. Big plans." I stared at her, this stranger wearing my sister's face. "It wasn't yours to take. And what about Grandma's scholarship fund, the students she wanted to help?" Megan rolled her eyes. "That was a waste. Why give money to strangers when it could be invested properly?" "You mean when it could be spent on this?" I gestured around her newly renovated apartment, noticing for the first time the expensive furniture, the designer clothes visible through her open closet door. "Don't be dramatic. I've set aside some money for you. Not half. That wouldn't be fair considering I did all the work, but enough for a nice vacation or whatever it is you want. What I want is my inheritance. What I want is for you to honor Grandma's wishes." She laughed. Actually laughed. "It's done, Liv. The money's been moved, invested, spent. You can't prove I forged anything, without an expensive legal battle, which you can't afford. And even if you could, much of the money is already gone." "You're my sister," I whispered, my voice breaking. "How could you do this to me?" Her expression softened slightly, the first genuine emotion I'd seen. "It's not personal, Liv. It's just, I deserve this. I've worked so hard. You've always had it easy. Everyone loves Olivia, the selfless nurse, the perfect granddaughter. No one sees how hard I've had to fight for everything." I realized then that this betrayal had been building for years, fed by resentments I hadn't even known existed. As I turned to leave, she called after me, "Don't be stupid, Liv. Take what I'm offering. It's better than nothing." The next few weeks were a blur of consultations with lawyers, each one telling me essentially the same thing. Yes, what Megan had done was illegal, but proving it would be difficult and expensive. The money trail was complicated, with funds moved through multiple accounts. Even if I won, much of the inheritance might be gone by then. I felt helpless, betrayed not just by my sister, but by a system that seemed to reward her cunning and punish my trust. I couldn't sleep. I lost weight. My colleagues at the hospital noticed, but I couldn't bring myself to explain. Then one evening, as I was sorting through a box of Grandma's personal items I'd taken before the house was sold, I found her old journal. Inside was a letter addressed to me and Megan, to be read after her death. I wondered if Megan had found a similar letter, if she had read Grandma's final words before betraying her wishes. The letter was everything you'd expect from Grandma Ruth. Wise, loving, full of hope for our futures. But one passage stood out. "I've lived long enough to know that money can be both a blessing and a curse. It can reveal character more clearly than almost anything else. Whatever you do with this inheritance, remember that your actions tell the world who you truly are." Those words sparked something in me. If money revealed character, then Megan had shown hers. But what about mine? Would I let this defeat me? Or would I find a way to honor Grandma's true legacy? So, I made a decision. I might not be able to recover the money, but I could still fulfill Grandma's wish for a scholarship fund. I would start small, with my own savings, and build it over time. And I would make sure everyone knew it was Ruth Reynolds' scholarship fund, including the people in Megan's professional circle. I created a website detailing Grandma's life and her wish to help students in need. I included the story of how the original inheritance had been misappropriated, careful not to make direct accusations that could lead to a defamation suit. I reached out to local media, who loved the story of a granddaughter honoring her grandmother's legacy despite obstacles. The response was overwhelming. Former students of Grandma's contributed. My colleagues at the hospital donated. The community college offered to match funds. Within months, we had enough for 2 annual scholarships. Then came the anonymous donation, minus $100,000 transferred to the scholarship fund, with no name attached. I knew it was from Megan, though she would never admit it. Perhaps shame had finally caught up with her, or perhaps she feared the growing publicity around the fund would eventually reach her colleagues and clients. I didn't acknowledge the donation publicly. Instead, I used it to establish the Ruth Reynolds Memorial Library at the community college, fulfilling another of Grandma's dreams. Megan and I haven't spoken since that night in her apartment, Sometimes I see her name in financial news or spot her picture at some charity gala. She's successful, by most measures. But I wonder if she's happy, if she ever thinks about what she sacrificed for that success. As for me, I've found an unexpected peace. Each year, I meet the scholarship recipients, bright, determined students, who remind me of Grandma. I tell them her story, about her belief in education, and her love of literature. I don't mention Megan. Last week, I received a text from an unknown number. The library looks nice. Grandma would have loved it. I didn't respond. Some betrayals cut too deep for simple reconciliation. But as I sat in Grandma's library, surrounded by books she would have cherished, and students she would have championed, I felt her presence more strongly than I had since her death.